and up in the clouds, but I've always felt that something's missing. That was until I found you right there in the crowd. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky. Oh, there's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make you mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect melody. Baby, don't say you don't believe in me. 'Cause you know, and I know, we're onto something good. You know, and I know, we got something good.
Hello, how's it going? My name is Bonnie Violet. I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain. And in case you don't know where you are, you found yourself at Say Something. And if you're joining us live Sundays, where I go live about once a week, and I just talk about stuff. So I say something. And this week I'm going to be speaking on belonging. So the title was Where Do I Belong? And so as usual, you can be watching this live on YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitch, or maybe you're listening to it afterwards on a podcast. Either way, please do engage as you see fit. I'd love to hear from you and love to hear your response to some of what I'm talking to as well. I wanted to start out with the lyrics to a song that kind of, I think, get us off to, I think, a start of what my experience with belonging has been like. This song is called The Wall in My Head. It's from There's Something About Jamie, which is a musical. And this is the lyrics. It was something he said, his words built a wall inside my head. Just one little thing, didn't mean that much to him, but it keeps building and building and building. This wall in my head, this wall in my head. Just one tiny thought, it started out so small. The thought made a brick, the bricks made a wall. And the wall keeps me down and the wall trips me up, and it keeps building and building and building. This wall in my head, this wall in my head. And here I stand with my feet stuck to the floor as I shout down the street, screaming for more. There is more to it, and I'll say the rest of the end, but I think, in a lot of ways, belonging is that feeling of connectedness. And in this particular song, I remember this song really reminds me of my relationship with, I want to say like my relationship with my father initially. And I think in a lot of ways, it's kind of been the theme song, if you will, of my life, in the sense of, I think that I've really put a lot of stock or let what a lot of people have said or think about me kind of get in my way of being able to connect and kind of, building this wall. And this wall in my head, I think, is very fitting because I feel like that's a lot of where I've spent a majority of my life. And I would say that I haven't really come into understanding, or I've come to understanding belonging in a new way more recently. And I think part of that was getting to a place in my life, which it's difficult, but really trying to look at belonging as like belonging to myself. And belonging is something that I think I've always been kind of seeking belonging from things outside of me, from like whether it's my family or it's my friends or it's my church or it's God even, or, this sense of belonging. I think there is an element of like belonging is about other people. And, but I think in that I was always kind of like, in some ways feeling like I needed to be what others wanted me to be in order to feel like I belong or to be a part of. And really, like from the beginning, I think since before I can remember, there were those thoughts, there were those words that were said, those actions that were done that that person didn't even really probably think about it that much, or it didn't impact them. They didn't realize how much it would have impacted me. I think, and I think we hear about that a lot, um, where sometimes it's resentments or things aren't personal, when people say or do things to you. And so I think for me, like, belonging was something that I sought a good part of my younger years. I felt like I didn't belong at school. I felt like I didn't belong at home. I sometimes usually felt like I belonged at church. And I was really, and I think much of my life, I've been challenged by this idea of not belonging here. And I think it was, again, it's kind of built to this idea of these walls that I've put up. There's these walls and these expectations and this belief that I've had for so long that, um, in a lot of ways, that I'm too much, that or any of the people or the institutions or the groups of people that I'm a part of, they can only, like, I can only belong to them in so much. Like, that at some point in time, there's some part of them or some part of the group that makes me not feel a part of. Um, and again, that's kind of like my own wall and my own um, inability, which leads me to think that it's more of an inside job than an outside job. That a lot of the times my sense of belonging has to do with my perception of myself within the environments that I'm in, um, versus maybe what's really going on. Um, I think, like, in a spiritual way, or kind of a higher purpose or higher calling, or kind of way, that we all belong to one another. And I believe that we all belong to one another. Um, but how do we do that? And I think oftentimes I feel belonging when I can have something in common with someone or a group of people, that I think allows me to let go of some of those walls, some of those things that I put up to protect myself, whether it's protect my mind or my body or my spirit, that I've learned. So I think belonging begins to happen when when I'm able to see some sort of similarities, or be in a place in which that thing that I feel like makes me not belong in certain places, um, doesn't matter. Um, and I realized this recently, that, like, the sense of belonging being like a I don't know, there's something that switched in me very, very recently. I had an experience where I went into an environment with a lot of people from my past, who I hadn't really spoken much about my transness with. And so I really didn't know, like, how, like, I just didn't know where I sat with people. And so, like, I went into this environment and this situation for days on end, and like, not, I guess, expecting and not knowing whether or not I belong. And through that whole experience and being in that place of, and there were people who didn't feel like I belonged there, and didn't want me there as well. And so and there was an element of me wanting to be, maybe where I wasn't wanted as well. And through this experience, I kind of, like, I just came to realize how much power I was still placing in other people's opinion of me, other people's willingness to let me be in their space or around them, and how much, like, just me existing, um, that people, like, there are people in my life that just don't get it, they don't understand it, and they don't even want to. And I don't think you have to understand me or understand all my parts in order to, like, um to want to be around me, or vice versa. But I just and through that experience, I'm just like, I don't know why I'm even trying to um belong belong somewhere that I don't maybe anymore. I In thinking about this belonging, I even in the wording I put, like, this is where I belong. I think it's been really easy, and I'm sure you hear a lot in when I talk about my experience in my life. I think that I can get really stuck in, like, my past experience and what had happened, instead of really thinking about like what is right now. So like this is where I belong. And that idea that like I am at a point in my life where I know that I am living the life that I choose. And I belong wherever I am, period. And I don't always feel that way. Other people might not feel that way. And yet that doesn't mean that I don't belong. And one of the newest experiences for me, and which has been kind of a bit of a dissidence, is I feel like I belong in and with my body, which again is something you've probably heard me say over and over the last couple of months, because it's just such a new experience for me. But I really starting to understand how my body belongs to me. The me is like, I think my spirit is who I really am. And the body is a part of me. And I think the body is a place that I haven't always felt connected to. I don't think that I've used it in ways to attempt to connect with others, but anywho, I've just been noticing. And I think part of that is just like, who else do I have to belong to? Like, and if I don't belong to me, then how can I belong to anyone? When thinking of belonging, I think of like, sometimes feels like there's obligations, or potentially like ownership or property. We think like this belongs to me or that belongs to me. I think ownership, obligation, property, and when I think of belonging, sounds a lot more. It does not sound like when I think of belong in the same way. So what else was I going to say? So last year, I went through, it was right around this year that it begun. And then over the next couple of months, I had just reached a point in my life. It was really hard to tell if it's just like my life, if it was my transition, if it was, like there were just a lot of things that were happening all at once. And I was really having a difficult time knowing my place in the world and knowing what I was supposed to be doing. And that's been a little bit of a journey the last couple of years anyway, but really just feeling like I don't know where I just don't know where I belong. I don't know what I need to be doing, like what job I need to be doing, or where I need to live, or, and it was really, when you live in a time, like I was living in a time that I didn't have a home. So I didn't have a steady, regular place to land. So I think that was super unsettling for me. But anywho, I remember kind of being in this space of like feeling really like needy. Like I felt everything felt really hard. It felt hard to call people to hang out with them. It felt hard to find a place to live. It felt hard to transition. It felt hard to not like transition enough. And, it was like everything was really difficult for me. And I felt like I was trying to tell people around me that I wasn't okay and that I needed help. And it was like nobody could hear me. I felt like I was screaming at the top of my lungs and nobody could hear me. And that went on for months. And I remember I got to a couple points where I was just like, again, when you feel like you're screaming all around, I think I never really kind of phrased it in this way, but it was a big moment of like, where do I belong? Do I even belong here? And I wasn't in a state of like, I didn't want to live, or that I didn't want to live anymore, but I definitely didn't know why I was alive. And everything just started to kind of like fall away. All the things that felt important to me at some point in time just started to fall away. And it scared me a little bit, to be honest, because it just felt new. It felt overwhelming. It felt like something I'd never been through before. And I was desperately felt again, like I was screaming for help, but nobody around me was seeing that, like not doctors, not counselors, not therapists, not family members, not close friends. Like nobody was getting the fact that I was okay. And then I was was not okay. And then I was starting to feel like a burden, potentially on these folks, but then also feeling like I wasn't important, or maybe they didn't care about me anymore, or and through that experience, I was really realizing that I don't think that I knew how to convey what I was going through in a way in which people could actually hear me. And that was something that had really had to come to understand, um, was again, I think it's so easy for me at times just to like to kind of get stuck again, to get stuck in my past, to get stuck in the words that were said, the actions that were made, that began to create these walls in my head, that began to create these walls in the world. And it's like I am at a point in my life where those are all of my own making. Um, and like at some point in time, like I need to take them down. And even if it's not that I take them down for everyone, it's that I need to be able to take those walls down even for myself. Um, and I have been like, this is where I belong is a language that I'm really trying to get behind. And I have a reminder that tells me that like this is the life that I choose. You are living the life that you choose. Um, and I'm choosing that every day. And I'm choosing to stay in this life every day. And if I choose to do something different, then I get to choose to do that. Um, and and I think that's been really important for me to get to where I can recognize that I am choosing the life that I'm living, and I am choosing where I belong. I'm choosing what I want to belong to, who I want to belong with. Um, and trying not to, and really letting go of this idea of like, I don't know, fitting in where I don't even want to fit, you know? Diana says, oh, Hannah's, maybe Hannah will pop in. Hi, Diana. I didn't realize it was a tag there for a second, but yeah, so like with the belonging, like where I'm at with it now, it's like there are elements of belonging to myself that I have been struggling to really own, and I think really hold fully. I have allowed and let the people around me, or the lack of people around me, or my perception of the lack of around me and the lack within me, to really just kind of like, which is so weird because I've been living into my transition, and I've been open and on, like talking about it and all those sorts of things. And then there was still kind of a part of me that has been scared to really go there. And, I've struggled with like just um, finding out, like, again, like where I belong in my body and how I'm going to present my body. And it's a journey, it's a process. But I feel like I've finally getting to a point of my life where finally, I want to say, oftentimes in life, I've continued to see, it's not that I've like, this is the first time, but this is like a time that I'm feeling most connected to this again, probably, because I don't know about you, but I tend to learn something and then I relearn the same thing, but it's kind of in a deeper context, or it's kind of just going a little bit further into it. And so I think I'm just at another layer within my life and my understanding where I am understanding what it means to belong to myself, and to be able to more so live into that and remember that on a regular basis. And for me to be able to remind myself, rather than expecting the world around me and the people around me to kind of like um, affirm and qualify my belonging in that space and time, and really just being able to own more, again, more of myself. um and I was really, again, I'm still kind of trying to I'm coming into, I feel like I'm coming into this, and in some ways I am putting out an experience and an understanding that I want to have, that I want to reach to. It's a reaching to a higher or further along self, which in some this could be like spiritual shit. It's like I don't feel like this is where I'm at today, but this is where I'm going. And I still struggle, and I don't necessarily think that it's bad to want to feel like I belong or needing others to affirm that I belong in this space, but divinely, spiritually, like I think one truth that I know is that we all belong together. um, the difficulty is how do we live as if that's true? um, and the only way I can begin to live as if I belong to everyone is by belonging in more and more groups or more and more different people in order to kind of get to maybe a better way of living in the world in which I can feel as if I belong everywhere or wherever I am. Um, because that is the truth. That's the truth for all of us, I believe. And that may even be a goal. Like that's part of our, I don't know, divine calling, if you will, is to get to a space in which we can, some people I think refer to it as the kingdom of God or the kingdom of God or heaven or, I think that's talked about in a lot of different ways, but I kind of have this belief in, I know that I'm in my body right now, or I'm living in a body, in a body in this earth right now. And I want to be a part of creating, or I want to be in the world and see the world in a way that I like hope for, and even have read about or believe to be a world of freedom, a world in which there's no harm, that maybe even no sickness, and it's like, how do we get there? And so, and I need to do my part, because I know that my parents did their part and their parents did their part. And, there's so many people who came before me who did their part in getting us closer to being better with one another, so that more people get to have a better experience with life. And so, and ultimately, if I'm continuing to need everything around me to tell me that I belong, that's going to limit where I go, and where I feel I belong. And I think ultimately that will probably challenge my growth, um, my feeling of contentment and satisfaction, and even just learning, wanting to continue to learn more. And so, me, I get off on these little places, but it kind of reminds me too, this sense of belonging and the idea that we all belong to one another. Period, is this idea of separateness. I think to feel like I don't belong would feel like I feel separate from. Separation or separateness, I think, is an illusion, maybe a helpful delusion at times. But I think separateness is not, it's not the truth, but it is an experience that we have. And so to feel like I don't belong is to feel separate from. And to me, feeling separate from in some ways is also equivalent to the idea of sin, as in sin, is what takes me away from God, or takes me away from me, or takes me away from you. Separateness, I guess, is how sin manifests, or how it impacts my life and the life of the people around me. And so, again, I think a lot of my life is beginning to and continuing to try to live into what I believe to be true. And part of that is that grace, like I do believe that like we all have value and worth, and like equity within that. I guess I think equity might be the right word. But the idea that no one is of more value or less value than another, and that we don't have to do anything to earn grace or even earn worth, which is so countercultural. And definitely one of my biggest challenges in life is to feel like I don't have to do things in order to matter, in order to be a good person, in order to get good results in life. I just have been on earth enough to know that that's not true. You can do all the right things, all the good things, and still get results that don't add up. And you can also like do all the shitty things and still get good results. So someone in the is asking me what my relationship is like with my father. And um, it's complicated right now. My father has asked me not to be in relationship with him right now, and so our relation, and we are in relationship still, but it's different, right? And part of that for me at this time is distance. Um, uh, there's I guess in talking about belonging, my father doesn't feel like I belong uh, near him right now, and I know that that's more him than me, but that's kind of where we're at. My father and I have had um, a really like we've had a relate, like it's varied over the years. I know that I've always felt it's felt a little bit harder. Um, my dad hasn't always loved the choices that I've made and the things that I've done, or maybe even how I expressed myself. But my dad he's always told me he loved me. He's always shown up for me when it mattered, and I always knew that he was proud of who I was, even if he didn't understand me, even if he didn't like. There was a part of him that was proud to be my father, and I believe that's still in there somewhere. But at this moment in time, I don't know where I'm at with that, to be honest. I don't want to go too into that because it feels like a fresh thing. And again, it feels one-sided. We haven't been able to really have a conversation uh, about um, about things really in depth. So I'm kind of left to either making up stories or assumptions of what's happening, and that really doesn't do me any good. All I know is that um, he's asked for me not to be in his life right now. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to stop trying, because it's not about me doing something different or me being something different. Because even when I do that, or I try to do that, or I think that I'm going to do that in order to like be in his presence, why would I do that? If it's not going to be a positive experience. And so that's just kind of where I'm at with most things in my life. It's just like I don't want to spend that time, and I don't want to put myself in places that um, I'm not wanted. Um, and I can continue to do what I can to maybe that will change. But for now, that's kind of the way things are. So I don't know if that was what you're going for, but that's kind of where I'm at with my relationship. Again, I really want to be in a space of like kind of moving forward with things. I've lived a good portion of my life kind of like as a victim to my father and some of my father's behavior and actions. And I don't want to live like that anymore. And I hadn't realized how much I had really kind of took a lot of that on as my own identity, or I let it impact the way that I saw the world and the way that I was in the world. Just like in the beginning of this song, which really again kind of relates to my father, but it was something he said, his words built a wall inside my head. But then it talks about in this song as well is that eventually, I started building those walls, and at some point in time, I need to be able to take responsibility for myself, what's happening in my life or not happening in my life, or at least how it is impacting me. And that's not to say it's not going to be difficult. That's not going to mean that I'm not going to be sad or angry or mad or hurt, but I do want to continue. I want to be able to move forward and not let my life and the way I show up in life be so dependent on what other people think of me. Um, because I've given them power for way too long, and power they never asked for. The only person I belong to is me, and that's all I can continue to do, is to try to. That's my only job in life, I think. We are almost out of time, and I did a lot of meditating before this, and a lot of things really came up for me, and I wrote some stuff down. And like always, when this time is to say something, it's not necessarily meant to be like some scripted sermon or lecture or anything like that, but it's really just for me to take some time to pause, to try to like land in myself, and to kind of reflect and speak on something that feels relevant and real in my life right now. And a sense of belonging is something that I was really striving for. And because I didn't have that sense of belonging a year or so ago, I felt really lost. I felt really scared. I felt a lot of different things. But through that process, I have begun to get into the space that I want to live into the truth that I do belong. I belong like I belong here, like physically in my home in Boise, Idaho, on this earth, within my family unit, within my drag community, within my trans community, within, all these sorts of things. And I need to stop letting old ideas and old beliefs and old words get in the way of my ability to really show up. Because what that does for me is that it makes me feel disconnected from everywhere I land. And then that constant feeling of disconnection leaves me depressed and sad and feeling isolated and alone. And that's just not the truth of what is happening. And so I really have to be able to work to really be able to open myself and let these walls down so that I can actually be present with people. And then in doing that, I can actually feel connected to what's happening, because we all know, we've all had experiences where we can be surrounded by people and still feel sad or lonely, or we can even sometimes experience physical harm and not be present for it, like dissociate. And so I think part of this is I really am trying to be present within myself, so that my spirit is residing and landing in my body, which again is a newer experience for me, so that when I show up in body, mind, spirit, heart, with with where I land, whether it's, wherever it is that I am, so that I can really be present to what's going on, so I can show up for others and I can let them show up for me. We're at that 33-minute mark, so I do want to say goodbye, but thank you for taking the time to listen. Again, I always love to hear from folks. If you have questions or comments, please do leave them in the description. If you're listening to this on a podcast, you can do the same thing there. So join me next week as same time, same place. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about yet, but thanks again, and be well. Have a good rest of your day, and be well.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up in the clouds, but I've always felt that something's missing. That was until I found you right there in the crowd. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky. Oh, there's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make you mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be, like a song